Hello, welcome, blessings, beloveds. So, funny story. What? First of all, welcome to Naked Hearts. Thank you so much for joining in again to this segment of heart activation. And I feel so blessed to be able to share this sacred space with everyone. My intention for recording my story is to be able to share the vulnerability and the heart space with everyone, to be able to connect to each other through our shared experiences of past hurts, and not because to focus on hurts, but to learn how to grow and connect with others, because I feel so much of what society has ingrained upon us, within us, is we need to sweep everything under the rug. And here in Naked Hearts, I want us to be able to become more comfortable with uncovering our truth and becoming more comfortable with our naked hearts, and being vulnerable in that space. Again, part of Naked Hearts is because I see in society that we have become more comfortable with sharing our body versus sharing our soul. And so I want us, holy fucking shit. But I love you. Come back. Okay, so I'm in this space of I can't wait to rewatch that. So oh fuck, do not. I swear to God, okay. Last night I recorded this whole segment, and I didn't have my microphone on. My new microphone I didn't have on, and 50 minutes worth of that just gone, which is totally okay. I knew instantly. I was like, well, I'm not even gonna try, because there must have been something within that wasn't aligning, and here I am today, at a marsh. Actually, I didn't plan on recording this. However, and I've never been here, so I was running, and I had wanted to check out these trails around here, and then I went on this boardwalk, and I saw this, and I was like, dude, this is like, I feel aligned to record here. And plus, it's fucking gorgeous. And then I love all animals, minus, I don't even want to say it's snakes, but so I thought that was a snake that was in the water. It wasn't. That was like a muskrat or a beaver. Okay, so as I'm walking on the boardwalk, I'm looking around, and marshes, they're not like the crystal clear water. They're mucky, they are thick, they are gross, and they just have all this stuff on top. So I'm looking around, and I'm feeling into the space here, and how this connects with the energies that I am harnessing, because this is beautiful, this is peaceful, and this is very serene to be around in the stillness that the marsh brings. And oftentimes the lotus flower is brought to attention in in spirituality, and the lotus flower, what it represents is that there's still a blooming, there's a blossoming, even and especially in the muckiest of waters. There is a beautiful flower that can anchor in the muck, And actually, the more muckier the water is, the more that the lotus flower blooms, the bigger the lotus flower becomes, and it's able to take root in that. So, and in my journey, I have felt aligned with representing the journey to the lotus flower, because I mean, beautiful things come from seemingly icky situations. Not sometimes, all the times. It's our perception of and our idea of what is icky and what is beautiful. And if we look at it from a higher perspective and just see the ripple effects of how this does or doesn't help others, and we're able to see and shift things a little differently. So as I look back at the first segment of my story, I am able to hone in an area. So we left off when I graduated high school, and night of graduation, I started drinking that night. And if I'm being completely honest, despite me not having substances within my body that last year and a half of school, I had this addictive behavior, which had followed me all the way up until my young adulthood, of using my body as power. Now, I lost my virginity when I was 14, and I have kids. I have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I look at them and I'm like, they are babies. I was a baby. And I couldn't imagine. I thought and felt that I was ready. I thought that I loved that person. And really, it was just a cry for a validation, for love, to be seen, to be valued, and all these things that I didn't know how to go within for myself, I sought in external stimulation, whether that being like chasing other guys, being chased by guys, flirting. I mean, I was voted the class flirt. And I was like super proud of that, which is, and that's okay because I didn't know any better. So even throughout high school, I used my sexuality as a means of manipulation. I used it as a means to get what I want, and a way to, it's powerful. Sex and money are one of the two most things that people use for manipulation to get what they want, or use over people's heads for blackmailing or whatever that is. And honestly, so there was two core beliefs that were instilled in me, and one of them was that I was pretty and therefore I didn't have to work hard for what I needed in life, and the other, work hard or be smart. I didn't have to work hard or be smart, and was always taught that I was average smarts. And so that was, I was just average smarts, which is, anyway, that's another thing. And so I relied on my looks, and I had the illusion that I was really good at getting what I wanted with my looks. And really, I was, every time I used my body or my sexuality or my sensuality to get what I want, I had actually built more walls around me and built more walls around my heart space, and I grew more disconnected from what love actually means to me and in society as a whole. And this is a big subject. As society, as in society as a whole, with rape culture, with sex sells or selling sex, or instant gratification, or power and control, using our bodies for anything is, some people would say that it's empowering. And I just ask you and invite you to explore, if you didn't have your body, what value would you feel that you bring to others? How would you achieve the same results if you didn't have your body? If we take away what the body is and what looks are, is the value still there? Or is it literally because there is a sexuality and a sensuality behind the skin that draws people to? It's just a way to explore how the world is and to start being aware of different ways of looking at things. So, because all of this, it's not, my mom was taught a certain way, which taught me a certain way, and I am stopping the generational trauma and effect from this. Like, that was my number one thing for my daughter, was to, there's no way I'm going to focus on her looks. Like, it will be in everything, and not because she does anything, but because she just is. And same with my son. It was like a whole different approach there. But so anyways, I actually started the whole chasing boys when I was super young, and I think I went into that in the first video. But as I learned that actually there is an addiction behind this, that there is the oxytocin from chasing and falling in love, and from the whole aspect of relationships, it releases the same chemical as heroin. And Patrick Carnes, again, he goes into the whole love and sex addiction and goes very much into how the two relate. So, and I want to also touch on the fact of, when we are born, it's actually the first 18 months, there's a frame here, and this is from Kelly McDaniel's Mother Hunger book. There is the first 18 months of our existence, how we are nurtured, how we make the emotional connection, whether that be through the eye contact, through skin contact, from being there and like cuddling and coddling. That is how we learn how to comfort and soothe ourselves. So if we did not have that, how people typically comfort and soothe themselves as young children is by masturbating early on in life, because that is, oh my God, I swear. Okay, I'm okay. I just get freaked out with snakes. Start masturbating early in life. Also, oh yeah, humping stuffed animals, using stuffed animals as like comfort tools. Also blankets, sucking your thumb constantly, or having like a blanket. And I'm like I had that was all me. And I actually felt a lot of shame from that as a child, because I didn't think it was, I didn't feel, I felt shame even as like that young of a child. So it's just something to be aware of, and very fascinating. And again, it's not because no blaming any parents. It's just a matter of what they were taught. My mom did not receive love and affection from her mom. My grandma did not receive love and affection. She was the baby of 13 children on a farm from immigrant family from Czechoslovakia, and my mom was my mom was raised by a single mom who hated men and had an abusive brother that, so they just didn't know. They didn't know. Okay. And that's okay, because that's where I come in, and that's where I start to illuminate these things and to help break the cycle for other people, is by stepping into the uncomfortable conversations and bringing these things to light and illuminate them to heal. So out of high school, I met somebody who, well, first of all, let's get into, like, I drank it like every day out of high school, and they say when you pick back up an addiction back up, that it progresses and it gets worse and it's faster, and that's 1,000% true. I went from not drinking to drinking all the time and becoming belligerently wasted every night, and then started becoming a pothead, and then I met somebody who introduced me to oxys. So it went from not drinking to drinking all the time to snorting oxycontins within 5 months of drinking again. And that relationship was based on drug addiction. He was abusive. He held a shotgun to me one night. He also punched his hand through a window. He threatened, he was my only source of drugs at the time. I'm going to have to pause this. So, just some passerbys with a kid. I didn't really want to be talking about drugs and stuff, which is whatever. But anyways, so this boyfriend was the only source for me to get drugs, and that was held over my head often. And so he would not give me drugs if I didn't have sex with him. And so there had been multiple times where I'd waken up with his hands down my pants, or even yet would pretend I'm sleeping so I didn't have to touch him. Or just the constant coercion towards sex for drugs. And so at that point, I never recognized that was like that wasn't okay. I actually felt that I probably deserved that for being an addict and addicted to drugs. And not until I started to uncover trauma did I recognize, like, oh, yeah, no, that was absolute, like, I was selling my body for drugs, but not in like a prostitute's way, like not in what one would call a prostitute, but I was prostituting myself. I was giving away my morals and my values for something that was, at my time, I thought was survival. Because that's what the archetype of the prostitute is selling, not trusting that the universe has your back to meet your survival needs, such as money, food, water, and selling yourself or selling your morals, values, and your spirit to get those quote unquote survival needs met. So along the way of this addiction, there have been many times where I had left that boyfriend, and this lifestyle was getting to be really, I was getting to be super lonely. I somehow or another, I actually wound up getting into an apprenticeship to do hair at the super bougie hair salon in Mequon in Whitefish Bay. And this was honestly an amazing experience for me, and I loved it all. I loved it all. This is where I learned so much from like some of the most amazing stylists in the state, if not in the nation. We would do runway shows. We would do runway fashion shows. I collaborated to create a fashion show, and we did those at bars. And I mean, it's like that was a whole nother lifetime. So I was living this life, and then I had my pill head life. And eventually I couldn't function as a stylist. And it was just really, I started, it was not a pretty sight. So anyways, onward. There was what brought me to my next bottom was I had become engaged with this man who actually I dated in grade school and in high school, and we wanted to have a family together. So I knew that there was no way for me to have a family while addicted to drugs. My mom, and who I call my dad, my stepdad, and my two younger brothers, they moved to Fond du Lac after my mom got her PhD. And so they were able to get me into a detox. So I went to this detox, and I was like, yep, I'll be in and out. I'll be back in Milwaukee no time. Well, that did not happen. 16 years later, still here. So what had happened was I got in this detox, and they were like, well, what do you think about a 90-day treatment facility? And I was like, what? I've never heard of such a thing. I don't need that. Like, I know how to do this. I can do this by myself, blah, blah, blah. And it just so happened that, like, I didn't really have a place to go back to. And so I went to this 90-day residential treatment and learned a lot. In that, my fiance actually broke it off with me, which I now see as one of the most unconditional loving actions, because he knew if I were to come back to him and to the Milwaukee area that I would not be able to stay clean. And I believe he is 100% correct. I was very upset that he did this, because I did not see that at the time. And given my history, though, I had already been attracted to somebody else. I already had my eye on somebody else that I had met through Narcotics Anonymous meetings. In this area, there is a male residential treatment facility, and about 2 blocks up there is a women's residential treatment facility. And that happens a lot, where there's a lot of mingling and stuff, because think of it, you get off of drugs, because you've completely numbed yourself for how long, and then you become to either the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever that is for you, and you're like extra stimulated. Plus, it's also a nice distraction, because remember I said that the chasing and the falling in love, or the thought of love, the lust, actually creates the same chemicals as heroin does. So no wonder why there becomes like this cross addiction, and that's for everything. People can see, like, you just substitute one addiction for another, because it's not actually about anything external. It is all internally, because we use the outside world to distract us from what is really going on within us. And that can even be for exercise. That can, I have absolutely been addicted to exercise. 100%, because I had put myself in my life on hold to achieve some ridiculous things. I hurt my body big time, and then I became super depressed and felt unworthy because I was more so running from myself than trying to love myself. So I met this guy, and it helped lessen the pain of having the engagement broken off. So about a month after him and I finished treatment, I found out I was pregnant. So this was, I mean, I honestly, I didn't ever think I could get pregnant. I can't believe I never had a scare before that. And yeah, I see now why this little baby was a miracle. He saved my life in more ways than one. So I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, did not know this guy, and had made this choice. Like, I'm going to be the most amazing mother no matter what. Like, I'm going to be this stable, loving, nurturing source for this child, no matter what the dad does. Obviously, is something that I do, that was open to, but it was I was going to be there for this child. It made for me at that time, it was like it was my purpose. Well, I actually, when I was pregnant, then you go get checked out by the OBGYN, and I hadn't been checked out in a long time, because when you are addicted, you are not focusing on your health. So through all of those things, I actually wound up finding out that I had cervical cancer, but could not do anything about it because I was pregnant. So after my son was born, I had a few surgeries. I think a total of 5. I had my whole cervix removed. I had my fallopian tube and my ovary removed, and basically it was like keeping the ovary and the uterus there, and so I could at least have a normal hormone regulation and not go into menopause at the age of 24. So here I'm pregnant. I find this out. I have cervical cancer. Also, then I know that the dad is also using. I know it because I could tell, but he was lying about it, and he was cheating on me and lying about it, and then I caught him, and then after all of this, he was still lying about it. And so anyways, it was like I kicked him out of the house, and it was just me and my son, like his dad, this guy was using. I knew that, and I didn't want to subject myself to that, and I wanted to be the best mom that I could be for my son. And honestly, when my son was born, it changed everything. Like I was like, oh, this is a human. Like I could not believe that I was trusted with such a beautiful human, amazing soul. This little guy, he didn't even cry or nothing. He just looked out and he took everything in, and he just stared at his mama. And like it was like almost, I mean, I knew love when he was in my tummy, but it was like then that baby came out, and it was a love that I had never felt. And, you know, they often say if you have boys first, that you're meant to learn unconditional love. And that could not be true, because I was not ready to have a girl. And because the relationship with my mom, and I was terrible. It was so awful. It was so jaded. And the resentments that I had towards females, and I mean my mom specifically, and that love for myself was not there yet. Was not there yet. So having my son first was, you know, he saved my life, because I honestly feel if I wouldn't have gotten pregnant, I would have not gotten checked out. Like, I wouldn't have gotten, oh, scary. So so this begins a whole nother chapter. I Shortly after my son was born, I received a letter from my biological father's mom telling me all this information about my father. She said that my grandpa had died, so my paternal grandfather had died, and this is where my dad lives, this is where she lives, she's being taken care of by my biological father, and blah blah blah. This is what I had been asking for my whole life, is just to know, like, I would write letters, because my grandma on that side would write letters, and growing up, but would hide them from my biological father and from my paternal grandfather, because in their eyes we didn't exist. But she kept contact going, and she would never bring up my father or answer any questions about that, and that's okay. You know, I know that how my father was, biological father, was loving me at that time, was the best he could do, and I am so grateful that he did not, that he wasn't a part of my life growing up. So I met that, some of that side of the family, and I'm trying to find the compassionate words for this. It was, let's say we just did not keep in contact. We tried to for a little while, and it just wasn't healthy whatsoever. So that contact got shut off, and you know, I'm so grateful that I could learn this on my own. One of the things that my mom did that I'm so grateful that she did was she never talked bad about my biological father. She always said that she loved him because he had a heart of gold, and he would give the shirt off his back to help his friends. But once it came to drugs and alcohol, it made him into a whole different person. And yeah, I totally see that with other people. You know, and how drugs and alcohol take over. So I was able to see for myself all of it, and I'm so grateful that she did not project her anger towards me or at me about him. At least, you know, with the words. Obviously, I could feel it. So I was able to heal this chapter in my life, and I was able to move onward in healing this masculine energy. However, the betrayal that I felt from my son's father, he was still drinking and still very much being unfaithful, even though we were still working it out and not living together. So he was still lying about being clean, and I think, you know, like, there was just something, like, I caught him, or however it came out, he wound up going back into treatment again. And this was after many Oh, it was awful. That was like the most helpless that I felt. I lost so much sleep. And just to think of all the stress that my son had gone through because of just the stress of like trying to get him back into treatment. And eventually he did wind up going back into treatment. Here I had just about 3.5 years free of drugs and alcohol, and his father goes back into treatment. I start having health issues and see my doctor, and he informs me that if I'm having cysts all over my ovaries, if I want to have a baby, I need to do that now. And hold on a moment. So if I wanted to have a baby, I need to do that now. And okay, this is not, this is how my thinking was at this time. Okay, I'm not going to get into another relationship. I don't trust anybody. There's nothing. I know this guy's shit. Like, okay, so I'm working with somebody who's unfaithful and who has an issue with drugs, and however, like, I could see that he's really good with family, and we already have a kid together. So if I'm gonna have a kid, I would want it to be with him, even though he's in treatment still. And that literally was the thought process. And so I believe like 2 months out of when he was maybe 5 months clean, sober, I actually wound up getting pregnant. We both agreed we would try to get pregnant, that it was, I mean, basically along the same lines. Well, if I'm going to have another baby, I want another baby with you, you know. And so this was quite miraculous that I even got pregnant, let alone how am I going to be able to keep the baby, because I didn't have the right equipment to keep the baby. So I wound up doing extensive research and traveling to Chicago to get this. At the time was a rare surgery in the middle of my pregnancy to be able to keep the baby, and needed to be on like bed rest for the whole pregnancy. So I didn't go to AA meetings, I didn't connect with anybody, I didn't go out and about, and I really just stayed tuckered in and was like, I'm doing whatever it takes to have this baby. And I remember I found out on my birthday that it was going to be a baby girl, and I was like through the roof. I was ready to have a girl. I was like, that's perfect. Then I'll have the boy and the girl. And it's like, it's odd because even as a little girl, I always pictured myself having the boy first and then having the girl. The boy would be like the protector, and the girl would be, just this little la. And so looking at that is even fascinating. So the other thing too is like, so I had my son, and so I had these couple years where I started to disassociate. Trauma started to come up. I started to like see things that would trigger me to just go ballistic, and I had no idea what was going on. I did start to see a therapist, and I did start recognizing that there was trauma there that needed to be looked at differently. However, I was not aware of the extent of that. So after my daughter was born, that is really when all of the trauma started coming up for me to look at, and for me to really break the generational cycle. So through this bed rest time, I learned some of the most difficult things, like my worth. I had a hard time asking for help. I had a hard time accepting help. I had a hard time knowing that I was worthy, even though I didn't do anything. That even making a baby in my tummy and keeping the baby safe, I felt like I had to apologize for. And like, how difficult was that for me to experience? Like, it was really, really very difficult. And our daughter our daughter was born, and it was a really scary time because she was born prematurely. I mean, and we had to have a scheduled C-section because of the surgery that I had. The time after she was born, I lost my shit. Like, I believe I had postpartum psychosis because I could not function, like, whatsoever. I didn't know how to speak to others. It was just really, I didn't know how to speak to others. I didn't know, I couldn't, I had nothing. Like, I didn't know anything, and I really lost my cool. And I started abusing headache medication, and then I started abusing, my mom at the time had some medication. I started stealing medication from her, and I started lying about using, and I started lying about being clean, and I was the one starting to point fingers, and I was the one that was now on the other side of the fence, and the one that would go to meetings but yet still come back and use. And I was the one who was putting our family at risk, and it just came to this space where, like, I would get a little bit of clean time, like 6 months of no using or drinking, or no, I didn't drink yet. I was abusing meds. I would, okay, oh, you scared me. You scared me, little ducky. I don't even know what kind you are. Telling me to wrap it up. Gotcha. So I was the one on the opposite side of the fence, and I was the one that was needing help. And I kept on thinking I could do it by myself. Because I was so well rooted in the recovery community. I went to all these therapy appointments. I had all these things in place. I had all these things. I was like, I can do it. I don't need to go back into treatment. And actually, treatment wouldn't take me back because I knew all of them that were working there. And they're like, you know what to do. You just have to do it. Yeah, yes, that is true. I don't know how to do this, though. Like, how do I stop? How do I stop this cycle again with a family? And eventually my kid's father, we got a house. We moved into this house, and my addiction got worse. I even started just taking, what is it, Broncaid. Oh my gosh, this is like so awful. And I was doing hair at this time, and it was so like, how sad. Like, I had no idea what was happening. And I remember thinking to myself, is this life? Is this really what I was made for? Like, to have babies and to live in a house and to be a hairstylist and to support him emotionally while he goes back to school. And I was like, this can't be it. This cannot be what life is. There's got to be more to it. Like, I had everything. Like, I had the picture perfect life. I had the boy and the girl and the nice house and the whatever, we were engaged at that time. I had that all, and I was like, this isn't happy. I'm not happy. And so eventually the kid's father said if I didn't get help again, I was going to be kicked out. And I did not, I could not get into an inpatient program. And I moved out. He he gave me the boot. And I'm so, you know, like at that time I was like, fine, if you're gonna kick me out, then we're not together. And so that started a whole abusive cycle in itself, which we will get to next. But that's where I'm going to wrap it up. And again, thank you so much for being with me on this journey. I look forward to sharing more with you and the next segment in my journey. And if you want to reach out to me, you know, heartactivation.net or through Facebook or however, and I will start interviewing more people, other people, when I am done with the segments of my life. Again, I just really wanted to be kind of the way shower and be extra vulnerable in those spaces and get real about conversations that need to be had. So thanks again. I'm sending you all so much love, and until next time.